I'm going to introduce now Barry Frey, who is the president and CEO of the Digital Place-Based Advertising Association, and he's going to have a conversation with Martin Porter from Posterscope about the benefits of that place-based medium that we talked about earlier. Hopefully, actually, everything that we talk about over the next couple of days is going to allow us to talk about things that I touched on, but also simplify the conversation that we are starting to have in this industry. Come on up, guys. Do you need this? I don't know.
That's good music, Josh. Thank you. Very nice. Kind of get everybody rolling and keeps the temperature down so everybody stays awake. Great points. And I think part of what Kimberly was saying at Beiersdorf is very important, and we've always tried to communicate to the clients in a way, and hopefully what we'll show you today about digital place-based advertising is some of the technological and consumer changes that can then be passed down to the people at companies and brands that are not spending their days immersed in media, but can understand this from where it comes from. So I run the Digital Place-Based Advertising Association. For those of you that may not know, we're kind of like what the IAB does for interactive. We promote the use, the planning, the buying, and try to make it easier for advertisers and agencies to understand the medium and enable the medium for their goals and purposes. This is a line from the cover of the marketing section of the Wall Street Journal about 2 months ago. Some of you may have seen it. It came from the eMarketer study, and it really points out, and once again from a consumer and overriding large, big picture perspective, of what's going on. We spent a full 5 hours and 16 minutes in front of a screen, and that's without even turning on a television. So, these are the kind of things, and I'm going to mention Kimberly again, because I think you made some great points. When you say this to someone that's not running media every day, and you point out to them what's going on in the consumer world, this has an impact. There's a lot of video going on everywhere, and being screened everywhere, and being looked at everywhere. Our marketing campaign at Digital Place-Based Advertising is actually Video Everywhere, and we've locked up the website, videoeverywhere.com, to kind of point that out. It's a very aggressive marketplace, the cacophony going on, the lexicon is really interesting, and I know some of you are very familiar with this. Video is being consumed on a litany of platforms and a plethora of devices. And that is important to keep in mind. And technology will continue to innovate, will continue to change consumer habits, will continue to change how we plan and buy media. So it's very important. Mobile viewing is going on, tablets. How many of you have phablets out there? Does anybody have a phablet? Whoa, good, we got a phablet. Who knows what phablets are? Pretty good, very good. For those of you, it's kind of this 5 to 7 inch mobile. It's a mashup of a phone and a tablet, evidently. And there's a lot of cord cheaters. How about cord cutters? Who's cut the cord out there? Interesting. Okay, about 20%. Any cord cheaters? Oh, good, we got one. Who is that? Hi. Cord cheaters are folks that basically are still using the internet cord, but to get all the over-the-top devices, all the over-the-top services like Netflix in their home. Now, who's completed House of Cards? I'm kind of curious. The second season. Look at that. Wow, very interesting. All 13 episodes, you binge viewing, and how long, Chris, did it take you to binge view that?
That was 3 weekends, up until 3 in the morning.
Look at that, 3 to 3, binge viewing straight through. How many of you have deja viewers at home? Okay, New York Times coined this phrase a couple of months ago. All the kids that keep watching the same old program over and over again. So Chris is a binge viewer, your kids are deja viewers. I kind of like that term. So anyway, it's a cacophony of what's going on. There's so many ways to view screens, and this is more challenging for the advertiser every day, as Chris so well pointed out early on. Video is being consumed everywhere, tablets, phablets, mobile devices, etc. And then even at the CES, the beginning of January, we saw 4K screens, 8K screens, and then all Google-type glass devices. Who knows what someone who wears a Google Glass is called all the time? Jessica? No? Okay. A Google Glass hole, if you haven't heard that term. And there's a lot of them around in different places, but only in certain places do I actually put that on. So a lot of terms have come about, but this really points out in a large picture what is going on out there. Video is everywhere, being consumed everywhere, and digital place-based media has become much more relevant, as Chris said, in the past 5, 6 years. What's happened is that, once again, populations are shifting, populations are changing. Women are working much more than they ever have. People are time shifting their jobs. People are traveling longer to their jobs. People are taking longer vacations, more frequent vacations, and increasing their leisure travel. All of this means people are spending more time out of the home, and they are intersecting with our digital place-based screens. And I'll give you the definition of what digital place-based video is to follow up on what Chris mentioned earlier. And by the way, that if I could just go back to that, Val in the back, if we go back, thank you, Val, very good. Basically, more time is spent out of the home in the office, but the average consumer was exposed to 75% more digital out-of-home media in the past 6 years. Big increase, and we'll show you more of what that looks like in a moment. Another good quote I like, the future is screens. Is anybody here from Starcom, MediaVest group? Great. Future is screens. Screens will dominate our environment. Screens everywhere, airports, hotel lobbies, et cetera, all around, and behaviors will change with the proliferation of screens, and that's Laura, who runs Starcom MediaVest group. So everybody is starting to notice these screens, consumers are noticing them, and now the advertising is picking up. In fact, the increases year on year have been very good. So how do I describe, and how do we as an industry describe digital place-based media? Digital video screens that exist where people dwell that has programming, content, and advertising. So what it's not is outdoor screens that don't have video. We all have video. We run advertising, commercials, and programming. And the other part is if you see outdoor screens that only run advertising, that's not who we are either. We have video, programming, and advertising. So it's a good environment and it plays well towards the environment. You may have seen them. In fact, half of Americans have seen them over the course of every month. Airports, the airline seats, the screens in the back of the seats, office buildings, Wall Street Journal office network in the lobbies, Captivate, you've probably seen in some of the agency buildings, the elevator Captivate screens. Taxis. Taxis are great. It's very much in a place where people dwell. It's very omnipresent. Gas stations, medical offices, doctors' offices, hospitals, and all of these areas are where the screens surround us, becoming much more important in our daily lives. And what we do is we set the guidelines, we develop the standards, we work with a lot of you folks in the room to once again make it easier and more understandable to advertise. And I'm going to jump down and grab a little water for a second. Oh! I could play Kathy walking around here. Thank you, Dave. Oh, yeah. You know, I'll take the bottle unless you've been drinking it. Thank you very much. I went running yesterday. I channeled my inner Dave Morgan, who is a marathon runner and an entrepreneur. So here's an example of where the screens are and what they look like. Once again, they're omnipresent. They exist where people dwell. And here's some of the programming content. So a lot of it is either repurposed or new or developed from a lot of the programming sources you're aware of. And here's many of our member companies. The DPAA is made up of about 55 member companies. The majority of them are networks, such as the ones I'm describing. Then we have Nielsen, Arbitron, GfK are members. We have NEC and Intel tech suppliers. So it's made up of technology suppliers to the industry, research suppliers to the industry, as well as the industry of the networks. So to go through briefly here, we have AdSpace Mall Network, big screens in the malls you've probably seen. The Izon company represents all the screens in Walmart and Best Buy and Wendy's and many retail locations throughout the country. RMG sells the advertising in the back of the airline seats and in lounges in airports. Verifone Media is in the taxi. Lifetime Fitness and Zoom are in gyms, a lot of dwell time in gyms. CNN Airport, I'm sure you've all seen as well. CBS Outernet is also in a lot of retail locations. As I mentioned, Captivate, et cetera, and others. So it's all screens that we see on our daily journey all throughout the day. And that's just what I mentioned over there, as you see the bullet point. And we surround the consumers, this is interesting, on their way to make a purchase. And I think, once again, I'm probably embarrassing Kimberly by now, but as people are on their way to make a sale, that's where we reach them, to make a purchase. And also, if people aren't making a specific purchase, they're in these retail environments, they're up and active, their kind of hearts are ticking. I think the point was made earlier this is not a soporific audience that has no job sitting in front of a TV. This is an up and active spending audience where the heart is beating, and they are thinking about, if not making a particular purchase, they're thinking about making a brand decision at the same time. And they have a wonderful array of targeting capabilities by weather, by day and time, by audience. There's a lot of ways that each individual network enables targeting. And then what we found, and this makes a lot of sense if you think about it, look, anytime you add a medium to a particular buy, you always mostly add reach. We know television, as Chris mentioned earlier, are light TV viewers. So when you add this medium, you extend the reach. We've done a consistent amount of reach and frequencies that indicate this. But the beauty is we're not just adding reach of another medium, we're adding reach to TV with TV commercials with 15s and 30s. So it's a way to better extend reach, get some good frequency in, and at times even make a more efficient buy. So that's a lot of what we looked at. In terms of the dwell time, significant dwell time, I think it makes sense. If you think about it, you could see what these dwell times are, and that's why it's very effective. And also, as mentioned earlier, Americans, almost half of Americans consume this throughout the month, so the reach is there. A lot of our big networks are measured by Nielsen, which is why they tuck very nicely into television buys. So we've done reach and frequencies where we've taken 15% out, we've added in 15% of these networks, extended the reach, a little bit more frequency, and made more of an efficient buy. And Nielsen has helped this with their consistent studies. What also is coming about now in a prolific manner is the ability to connect to digital and mobile. So for instance, Mobiquity actually pings people walking around in malls, and then the screens say, connect to us via this. You're probably familiar with QR codes, NFC. Bezo is a way that people are reached in the office building in the lobby and then reached on their set-tops, on their screens on their computer when they get to the office. So there's a lot of ways now that this is being connected, and we're getting a lot of digital measurement. The phones are coming in now, which is also offering a lot of characteristics of how to target better here. The growth has been very nice. Yes, we're a smaller base than in some other media, but we've had a very good growth in the past year of 13%, which ranks very high. In fact, Randall Rothenberg at the IAB has not released the IAB video numbers yet. They'll come out higher than us, but without those numbers, when you talk about just display and other media, our growth is very, very aggressive, and we see it continuing for the next years to come, especially as we tell the story better, which we admit we probably haven't done that well. The Jack Myers report actually indicates next year that we're looking also at a significant increase in our industry for the advertising monies. So what's some of the impact in this whole video ecosystem? We deliver video impressions in very powerful methods where people dwell, significant screens. The screens are either large, or in an elevator, they're the only viable video action going on at that time, so they are very heavily viewed, as we see that. I have mentioned all that already there. Look at that. Taxis and gas stations, it's the only interesting element when you're there. And the dwell time, whether it's doctor's offices or airports, people are really hanging around, and this provides them something to do. So video is everywhere, screens are everywhere, and this is part of that whole ecosystem. When we compare it to other video viewing on, say, the web, this is interesting to look at. If you think about it, all of our screens are above the fold. There's a lot of issues with something is a couple of millimeters above the fold. If it's counted, all of ours are consistently above the fold, and they're very viewable compared to other types of media as well. If you look at the video players on the web, some could be very small, and those impressions are counted. Some could be erratic, and the impressions are counted. Ours are very visible and able to communicate that need very much so forward. Also, it's the only content on the screen. If you look at the web, you see basically, once again, I'll use the word cacophony of banners, of skyscrapers, of content, of links, of other ads, of video. We are the only element on the screen, and your advertising presence is the only one that's there. And this is a big issue. I think Wendell Millard has quoted up to 30 to 40% of those impressions are fraudulent by the big bot issue going on. We have none of those issues in this medium. So once again, what this chart points to is that, yes, video viewing is shifting, and much of the video buying now is moving to online, and our contention is stop right there. Before you think about and put it all online, we've got a lot of very viable, omnipresent screens that can do a good job, in some ways, better and beyond video online. Now, we're not saying shift all that money this way, but we're saying this is a very important part of the ecosystem. And what's interesting is the last point here is where in so many of the other media we're looking at, the consumer is in control. The consumer can skip on a DVR. The consumer can choose not to view or to move around the screen. This is not necessarily the case. In this case, the advertiser and the brand is in control. And of course, when you look at elements like mobile, this is not an interruptive medium. It's not coming in as you're making a phone call, an ad, or you're making a text. And once again, the viewer experience and the advertising experience is not very small. It's of size enough to showcase a brand. Many elements of targetability and addressability by mindset, by geography, these are all digital networks. So many of the same disciplines that are enabled on the web are available here. Once again, mashing up environment, the power of that, with the power of digital, as people are on the path to purchase. This is something we did. We took a Nielsen Cume facility. We modeled the reach and frequency. And this has become very effective for Tier 2 autos, where now we actually formed a group inside the DPAA that is working with auto companies and QSRs to make it easier for our advertiser friends to plan and buy the medium. So we took one market, we took an auto dealer, and we basically took out 15% of their TV buy. We replaced it with about 8 to 10 of these digital place-based networks, and we found in this case almost a 9% increase in reach and certainly a more efficiency against 25 to 54 CPM. This has been so successful so far. We formed this unit inside the DPAA, and so far we've done business with Fiat, Chrysler, and 2 other autos, and now we're also targeting QSRs for the same means and methods. And that's what this talks about. Because these screens are all over the country, there's millions of these screens, we can effectively target DMA, regional, and national advertising. Chrysler, Fiat, and Ford participated in this. A&A did a study with Nielsen. This is about 4 months ago. And their conclusion was half of all ad campaigns will be multi-screen by 2016. And they defined multi-screen as computer, tablet, phone, and digital place-based media. So this is becoming much more on everybody's radar. And of course, it's an important medium. I'd like to bring up Martin Porter now. Martin is a Senior VP Group Director of Client Management with the whole group of Dentsu and Posterscope. And we're going to talk a little bit, Martin, about where digital place-based advertising is, where it was, and where it gets to its needed part in the ecosystem. So I'd like to kind of first mention and ask Martin, maybe what do you see from an industry and an advertiser agency perspective? You know, what have been kind of the upsides and what are the challenges to this medium?
Well, we're starting to see, first of all, that it's an opportunity, but it has been a challenge, is the siloing of media. And I don't know, let's say 20 years ago, agencies, you know, split apart and we suddenly became all very specialized units. But we're seeing more now where, you know, clients are you know, more global briefs where clients are coming back to a full agency group. That doesn't mean that within our group we do not have specialist experts and divisions, but it just means that it's much easier for us to be able to break down those silos. And there's still a long way to go. At Dentsu Aegis Network, we have now created a video activation team, which the whole point of that is to break down, here's a TV department, here's an out-of-home department, and here's online department, is to start thinking it more from a holistic point of view of where are the opportunities that we can reach audiences with video rather than thinking about it in, you know, very traditional siloed ways.
The silo is such an impediment in so many ways. For those of you kind of new to the media world, you know, if you think about the Mad Men days, where you may have seen that, you had the creative director, the account guy, the media person, and then maybe the head of the agency all sitting in the same room at one time. So when they approached a medium, they could say, what would the creative look like? You know, how do we approach it? What's the planning strategy? And then how do we actually buy it? Of course, these days, from the unbundling years ago, you had not only the creative department across town, but that was sitting at Y&R, and the media was being done at Group M, completely different agencies. So now, as technology has changed media, you know, we have to get all those groups thinking together, and we got to break down the silos, as you said.
And there is still some way to go in terms of, you know, there's lots of moving parts. There is still not an exact standardized measurement metrics
Across all media.
accountability across all media, which is a challenge that we need to address. You know, and how online can be so very prescriptive in its targeting of dropping a cookie on you and knowing exactly where you go. That's never, you know, that's not as easy to do in out of home or TV. You know, so there are still challenges to face.
Right.
But definitely that opportunity of thinking about video as a channel in its own right, rather than in the old-fashioned sort of siloed channel way.
I was with, some of you may know Jack Haber, who runs all the Colgate advertising globally, and he said to me their new mantra inside, and Josh, you may like this one, his mantra inside is video is the new day part. Kind of makes sense, Chris, in a way, and that's what Chris Magel's doing at the Initiative, and really putting it together, understand the power of video, but also how do we bring it all together to make up with the fragmentation and the changes. How about the power of place? How have you found that in your workings?
Well, I think location is becoming increasingly important. And as has been mentioned already this morning, as you say, prime time, consumers are choosing what is prime time. They can watch what they want when they want
it's
to
their
watch
own
it.
prime
yes,
time.
Yes,
Right.
know, your prime time might be
Right.
3 a.m. at the morning when you're binging some, you know,
Right.
box sets of Breaking Bad or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore, you know, and as we've said, like TV viewers, spending more time out of home, therefore, when I will now choose to have my prime time moment will very often be when I am in a specific location or environment. It might be that I have got my laptop out because I'm sitting in Starbucks and I've got an hour to kill to do nothing. It might be I'm in the back of a taxi. I catch up on things while I'm standing in the gym. So I think location's really going to become more important. But also because of the ubiquitous nature, you know, consumers are constantly connected. I think it's really changed the path to purchase. We're constantly, because we're connected, we're constantly now in the consideration set, because I can view video and content anywhere, anytime, any place. I'm only ever a jump to a physical store or a tap away to a virtual store. And I think that's, you know, where the location and environment point can really add an extra layer.
It's interesting how consumers are always on now. They're always considering brands, always considering purchase, and we found this in our environments, you know, whether they're in the mall, the gym. Consumerism has become so active, and it seems that, you know, messaging to them can be done 24/7 everywhere. But what we found too, and I think Chris touched on this, is the context of the environment too, when you're in a mall, or maybe you want to speak to that.
But also as well, yes, absolutely, the context of what you're doing and where you're doing it,
right.
Is increasingly, you know, more important. I don't think, you know, it doesn't take a huge leap of faith to think about the sort of product categories that you can hit me with while I'm running on a treadmill is going to be different than if I'm, say, standing in the line at the pharmacy. But also, I think what the digital out-of-home in place-based can really bring is an element of real-time as well, on the basis that we have got a much better ability now with technologies to be able to deliver that message. You know, obviously it's being delivered in real time anyway, but how we can then manipulate that to make more personalized content with, you know, we have content management platforms that means that you could be running video across place-based on 10,000 different screens nationally in about 20 different environments. And we have the ability to pinpoint down to individual screens to be able to change that message based on any sort of ambient factor, whether that's from the brand's own proprietary data, social media feeds. If something suddenly blows up on Twitter that's pertinent to the people of Orlando, that message can then be changed in that particular moment, in that particular location. It can be based on ambient factors, and it just brings out this ability to, you know, not only is it about delivering, you know, video in exact locations, but we could be made really pertinent to the actual, that exact moment and that exact location.
So in a lot of ways, it has the best of data, of targeting, and of in the new school and of the old school environment and programming and context. The business, yes, the past year has grown. It's currently about an $800 million business. If you exclude cinema, with cinema, it's about 1.4. But it needs to get going faster. I think you mentioned breaking down the silos. Maybe you want to talk, Martin, to educating clients. And how do we educate the clients to understand this? They've got a lot on their plate. You know, they're looking at point of sale, they're looking at moving product, et cetera. How can the agency specialists gain more or further knowledge, and how can they best educate the clients?
Well, I guess it goes back to that point of being able to break down the silos, and there's a lot of, I guess, even internal education that's probably needs to be done within agencies. You know, I think people often, in the old school, in terms of out-of-home billboards, in a very traditional sense, were big branding, you know, great for a product launch, mass message, really quickly, high frequency, all adult coverage, and it still does really well at that. I'm not knocking traditional out of home, but it's the fact that actually we can start getting more granular and being able to reach specific audiences at specific times in specific places. And we need to, you know, particularly within denser Egypt, we have been, you know, working with both our mobile team, and I say the creation of video activation team, to bring all of these elements together so that we can start just going to clients and talking as about video. We don't go, and when we're pitching to clients for new business, we don't talk about, and here is what we can offer you in the out-of-home world, and here's what we can offer you in the TV world. It's about just saying, you know, this is an opportunity for getting video content to your consumers in a multitude of touch places. It isn't just about, you know, say, gone are the days where you could just reach them in their living room.
Right.
And it's about, we've already said they're on 24/7, so where can I reach them 24/7?
Excellent. So I think there's some themes here, and a great theme of the conference as well is video is everywhere. How do we reach the consumers that are consuming the video everywhere? And as we mentioned earlier, either dumb it down or simplify it. I think Paul from Horizon, you know, said in terms of communicating to the clients, which is very key. Stay with me maybe, Martin. We're going to run through just the rest of this here and kind of sum it up. We've talked about, I think, all of these elements in the mobile integration, which maybe we have another thought on as we finish up. I don't know if you wanted to make any quick comments on the ecosystem.
Yeah, we certainly see, I think, you know, say in the past, I just said, if you thought about what, say, out of home would be, it would be posters and ads. And I just think now, you know, in terms of thinking about digital screens out of home, they're part of that bigger ecosystem. There is that element of mobile, laptop, not necessarily, you know, they're all things that, as we've said, that I can see everyone in the room, you know, everyone's got a laptop or a connected device on the table. So all of this, you know, and we're not sitting at home in our front room anymore. So this is about, you know, part of what makes up that sort of infrastructure. And it also means that we can then, on top of that layering around, it's not just about delivering advertising to people anymore. It's about what can we do that is engaging content, building brand stories, and, you know, that can be anything from social media, services, utility, gaming, anything can all sort of sit around those, any sort of digital screen that you have got in your hand or appears on a wall outside of the home, really.
Terrific. So just wrapping up in summary, digital impressions for video neutral or agnostic strategies drive consumer interaction. They link to social and mobile, connecting on that path to purchase, which is very key. Once again, another theme, how do we reach those light TV viewers? Geo-targeting and all elements of targeting are available. And then technology alters habits, as we saw, the impressions, as you so eloquently said. By the way, you also eloquently said ubiquitous. It's very nice. You did that well. Bit of a quick 30 seconds here. We could run it, Val. This shows how technology has affected our everyday lives, and consumers are seeing it, and the media business is picking up on it. I don't know, Val, you want to run that commercial back there? There's been a couple of these lately. This is one example of it. Maybe. Soon.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Everybody knows that, Parker.
Well, did you know auctioneers make bad grocery store clerks?
It'll be $23.50. Now 75, 23.75 on them, heading it down 23.75, 24, $24, 24 and a quarter, now half, 24 and a half and 75 and 25, now quarter, 26 and a quarter, on them, heading it down 20, you want to do it, 5 and a quarter, sold to the man in the khaki jacket.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you, well, you know.
There's a lot of commercials that have this. Like Geico actually will be doing a big campaign on the Captivate elevator screens. And as the last thing, we have a big summit every year. We had 600 people last year at the Hilton. Kat Greenleaf was a digital place-based media star. She's in the taxi cabs now on USA Network with our show Talk Stoop. We had Chris Magel there and others. And that's a good way to continue to learn about digital place-based media. And I thank you all very much, and thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.